what I know is that um, the sheriff went while he was taking classes at Sul Ross, would travel over there every other weekend or every weekend something. And I did hear that he was involved in an incident of a sexual nature with a kid from over there, possibly somebody that was not of age. And yes, Campa responded, and I don't know if a criminal incident was ever generated. Yeah, well, that's what the assumption is. The assumption is that he went and he picked him up, and this had to be towards the beginning of the first term. We're talking about eight years ago almost. The last he Campa was very outspoken, and when Lanahan arrived, Lanahan and Cross began to kind of conspire to have him ejected, lack of a better word. But Campa was kind of a thorn for them, so they started feeding the sheriff a lot of negative information about Campa that maybe the sheriff was oblivious to prior to that. And the incident that absolutely did it was Campa arrived to his house, and there was a party going on at his neighbor's house. His neighbor was Eddie Plasencia, and Campa was invited to that party, and Campa started drinking and bad-mouthing the administration, and bad-mouthing the sheriff and the commanders, and Marco Vargas was in that party, and he was kind of just taking notes on everything that Campa was saying. And he went to the sheriff and he told him everything that happened, and that's what made the sheriff get rid of Campa. Yolanda Campos is currently working at the jail. She was in this last peace officer academy, and she passed the academy. She's at the jail because she's waiting to come out to patrol. There are no openings currently, but while she was in the academy, she did not qualify with her weapon during the week of qualifications, and her stay at the range was extended until she passed. The orders that were given were, she'll stay at the range until she qualifies. Absolutely not. Yolanda Campos was involved in a lawsuit with against the sheriff. She filed a lawsuit against the sheriff, which she subsequently won in the area of $500,000. Several years back, she was involved in a child custody dispute with her ex, and the way that Bill Alice led that investigation, and the strike team was used in different capacities for that investigation, and subsequently, she did not feel. Bottom line is, she didn't feel that it was safe for her child to be with her, with the father. So they went through a divorce, and there was a divorce decree. And when the father would try to pick up the child, she would refuse. And so he hired Mr. Alice. Well, he hired Steve Ortega, which is Mr. Alice's partner. And so Bill Alice involved himself in this case. And subsequently, they end up filing an arrest warrant for Yolanda Campos for interference with child custody, and they fire her. They arrest her and they fire her. Well, she gets her job back through an arbitrator, and then she sues the department, and she gets almost $500,000. And a couple years later, she goes through the academy. She went through an oral board, which she miserably failed, and she was still given an opportunity to be in that academy. And her grades were subpar the entire 6 months of the academy, borderline failing, and she manages to pass academically, physically, and with the qualification, like we had discussed. Yeah, he was ready to kick her out of the academy, and he had, sent up some paperwork to Joe Chidas, who was the academy director at the time, to have her removed from the academy because she can't pass firearms qual. But they come back and they tell him, no, you'll work with her. If she has to stay an extra week or however long it takes for her to qualify, then that's what we'll do. I believe so, yes. Yes, they would use the Explorer account, and the Explorers. They opened up a haunted house, in which it started a little, started small, and then over the years it grew to where eventually, one of the last years that Campa was there, that haunted house was making, 25, 35, and up to $40,000 during that month of October. And those funds were run strictly by Campa. And there was really the word is that there was really no accounting for any of those funds. There was an Explorer account set up through the commissioners, through the sheriff's office, but it was not used. The account that was used was a private account that was opened through the Boy Scouts, by Campa and by Randy Tabbitt, who is now retired. And they are the only ones that had access to that account. And the statements would go to Randy Tabbitt's house. The statements would not go to the sheriff's office. So nobody ever knew what went into that account and what came out, what was spent, what it was spent for. And as a matter of fact, when Campa left, the sheriff ordered an investigation of that account, which was conducted by Commander Lopez at the time. And Commander Lopez did an investigation, and he even brought in Campa and Tabbitt after they had retired to ask them a bunch of questions, because when it was all said and done after the audit, there was tens of thousands of dollars that were unaccounted for, and charges on those accounts that were unexplainable, that had nothing to do with the sheriff's office or with the Explorers or anything like that. So no charges were ever brought up. Yeah.